Hello everyone and welcome to a very nice game that was played in 2016 in the Hainan Danzhou Grandmaster Tournament between Nepomniachtchi and Ding Liren. If you are wondering about their ratings, these are the actual ratings they had in July of 2016, so that's why I use those. So hope you don't mind that if they're not their current ratings, but I thought it'd be more authentic if we did it this way. Now, it is finally official. Nepomniachtchi will face Ding Liren for the World Chess Championship title, as Magnus has officially sent a letter to FIDE where he declines to defend his title, and both Jan and Ding were officially invited to partake in the 2023 FIDE World Chess Championship. Now, if you guys remember, Jan won the candidates tournament very nicely, a full 1.5 point ahead of Ding Liren. He finished with some 9.5. Ding had 8 points. And usually when you win the candidates tournament, your prize is to challenge the world chess champion. However, Magnus will not be defending, so Ding, who was actually second in the FIDE candidates tournament, now becomes all that much more important. And even Hikaru was very, very close. If he got that second place, we could be having a Jan versus Hikaru World Chess Championship in classical, not just in Fisher Random. But it's again questionable if Magnus would decline the title if he were to face Hikaru, for example. I don't know. That's just a whole different story. So I decided to show you one game that was from this very nice tournament in 2016. It is their first ever classical game that did not end in a draw. That's all I'm gonna say, and it features a very nice line of the Scotch, so I'm sure you guys are going to enjoy that as well. So let's dive straight into it. Nepo has the white pieces, and he opens, the pawn is already here, with pawn to e4. We have pawn to e5, knight f3, knight to c6, and now pawn to d4. The Scotch opening, or the Scotch game, as advertised. E captures on d4, knight captures on d4, and now bishop to c5, just putting pressure on that knight on d4. And now bishop to e3 is by far the most popular continuation for white, but here we have knight captures on c6, the second most popular, and now b captures on c6. Queen to f6 is also possible. You could just threaten checkmate, invite white to play queen f3, trade queens, and then grab the knight on c6. But if you want to keep the queens in the game, then just b captures on c6. We have bishop to d3 by Jan, and now pawn to d6. And now, again, the position is a known one here. You will probably see some like castles, knight to c3, or queen to e2, or moves like that. But the move in this game has never been played before, and never has been played since this game between Nepo and Ding, and that is pawn to h3. This is what Nepo decided to bring to this tournament, and obviously it has a purpose of confusing Ding, as it's a very weird move to play. So it is now, as of move 7, that we have a completely new game. So let's see how Ding continues. He plays knight to e7, and already this could be very, very interesting, because here the engine really likes queen to h4, but this is not a move you play. I mean, you don't play queen to h4 unless you're like Jan would play queen to h4, even if he never saw the position probably, but maybe for Ding the position doesn't call for it. The thing is, you are threatening checkmate, and that's not, I mean, of course you're not going to checkmate your opponent, but it's very tricky how to continue the game for white. Point being that if you castle, you're just lost. It's that simple. Now bishop captures on h3, g captures, and now of course queen to g3 check, king to h1, queen captures, and now after king to g1, it's not all that clear how to actually finish the attack, but the g5 wins the game here. Beautiful stuff here. I mean, it's such a weird move to play, but if it works, it works. Now, for example, to give you some ideas, bishop to e3, of course you want to eliminate this bishop here. Knight h6, you don't care about the bishop. If bishop captures here, knight g4 threatens checkmate, and now after rook e1, clearing the f1 square for the king, because if now queen to h2 check, you can run. Now you're gonna capture on c5, and yes, you have tripled pawns. You sacrificed a piece for the attack. It doesn't matter. White is without a move. There is no good move white can make here. Everything is covered. You can't bring the queen to f3. You can't bring the rook to e3. The knight is covering that. I mean, there are no useful moves here. Let's say play queen d2. Look at this, c4. Already the rook is coming into the attack. Bishop captures, rook d8, bishop d3. Now rook d6 with rook to h6 and queen h1 checkmate. So insane stuff. But of course, it's not forced. So after this h3 move, you could play queen to h4, but then white would have to figure out how to defend properly and how to continue the development. But as Jan brought this variation to the tournament with h3, Ding probably thought, of course, Jan knows about stuff like that. So Ding just played knight to e7. We have knight to c3, and now we have knight to g6. We have knight to a4 now. It is important to get rid of this bishop. So bishop d4, c3, and bishop to f6. So okay, you do not win the bishop, but at least you've gotten the bishop off of this diagonal. And finally, we have castles by Nepo. We have knight to e5 now, attacking the bishop, and just bishop to e2. So both players keeping their bishop pair alive. Kingside castles by Ding, and now pawn to f4. And why wouldn't you? The knight has to go somewhere. Knight to d7, and now queen to c2. Nicely developing the queen, then the bishop, and then the rooks will be connected. We have pawn to c5. The knight here isn't really doing all that great, but if you think about it, this knight really isn't doing all that great either. The bishop is on f6, you can't put it on f6. Even if you could, maybe you wouldn't want to. Maybe you just give white a very valuable tempo. You can't really do all that much with it. So probably you will put it to b6 at some point, and then Jan will just trade this knight for this knight. So bishop to f3, putting the bishop on this diagonal, rook to b8, and now bishop to e3, continuing development. And now again, there are many ways you could continue this. You could play something like knight to b6 right away. You could play bishop to a6. You could even start with a nice move like g5, also possible. It's idea being that you want to capture on f4, play king h8, and put the rook on the g file to put pressure on white's king side. But the Ding, not feeling like playing that kind of a game, goes bishop to a6, attacks the rook, rook f to d1, and now we have queen to e7. Makes sense, as you do not want this rook aligned with your queen. Bishop back to f2, and now bishop to b5. Now putting pressure on the knight here, and it seems like Ding wants to capture on a4, and then after queen captures, play rook captures on b2. But this isn't a very good threat. For example, let's say play rook e1, you prepare e5 at some point. Bishop captures, queen captures, and rook captures. It looks like very good for black. You've gained control of the second rank. But look at this, e5. And now after d captures on e5, queen captures on a7. With c7 hanging, you can't capture here because the queen is on e7. It's not all that impressive for black. And also white just has a passed pawn. White can start pushing that passed pawn. So maybe in some lines, but it's not a concrete threat. But still, Nepo plays rook a to b1. We have knight to b6, and now he does trade this knight. That was on the rim for the entire game for this knight on b6. So captures, and now rook to e1. In case some of you were only listening and not watching, that was a captures on b6, not c captures on b6. So here we have bishop to c4, putting pressure on the a2 pawn, and now pawn to b3. Attacking the bishop on c4, bishop back to e6, and now pawn to a4. We have rook f to d8. Also, you could consider something like g6 if you consider f5 to be a threat, but just rook f to d8 by Ding, and now comes pawn to b4. And now it looks like you are threatening a5, which will definitely create a passed pawn. So Ding just plays bishop to c4. Now you don't really care about a5 because a6 is guarded. And if a5 a captures on b6, then you will happily undouble your c pawn. So it's not a problem. So b captures on c5 by Jan. This is a beautiful move that trades down into a wonderful, wonderful position for him. Look at this. B captures on c5, rook captures on c8, rook captures on c8, and now pawn to e5, just breaking through here. D captures, F captures. Now, of course, it seems like you could capture this, but then, I mean, how are you surviving this? If bishop captures on e5, a nice queen to e4 attacks the bishop twice now, and also the bishop on c4 is attacked. So instead, after f captures on e5, bishop to g5 is played, and now we have pawn to a5. Nepo just starts advancing his passed pawn. Instead of a5, I will just mention it because it's really a nice slap in the face. There is this move h4, and it's just a very ugly move to meet because it forces bishop to an even less favorable square. It forces the bishop to h6. Point being now that if bishop captures on h4, you can just trade, and there's rook e4 winning the bishop on c4. So you're going to have to move the bishop back to h6, which is not all that great. So maybe a slight improvement to Jan's a5. G6 now by Ding. And this was queen to e6 was a little bit better. You want to cement your control over the a6 square. G6 does not do all that much. Jan plays queen e4 now, puts pressure on the bishop on c4. Queen to e6 defending the bishop and also keeping an eye on that a6 square. And now comes bishop captures on c5. Now, instead of this bishop captures on c5 move, I will also just mention one incredibly beautiful line because this is classical, so, you know, we are here to enjoy beautiful lines. Look at this bishop g4 move. It seems like it's doing a whole lot. Now, if the queen moves, you're going to push e6, you're going to ruin black's king side, and then you're going to just win the game easily. However, what happens if pawn to f5? Probably what happens is you're going to have to calculate a lot of what happens here, and probably everything gets traded off and you have an endgame that's maybe not so certain. However, it is completely winning. Look at this. E captures on f6, queen captures on e4, rook captures on e4, and now how do you play this? It doesn't really matter. Let's say you play rook to b1 with check. White will just block rook to e1, and after captures and captures, now how do you defend? You could either go for this pawn or you could go for this pawn, and none of it is really good. If you capture or play something like king to f7, just bishop to c8. You gain control over the a6 square. You're going to push a7, a6, a7, and a8, bring your queen into the game and win the game. There is no way to defend the dark squares as your pawns are blocking the dark squares, so this would just be completely winning for white. And another thing, after this bishop captures on e1, if you don't go after the f pawn, if you go for something like bishop to a6, you blockade the pawn, you cover the c8 square. Now look at this, bishop to e6 check. Now all of these squares are covered. King to f8, f7. And now the problem for black is there is no way to control all of the dark squares because you can reach the black king just so many ways, and Jan just so happens to have a dark square bishop. So even if you don't do anything, just bishop g3, for example, captures, and bishop d6 check will end the game. And if you try something like bishop to f4 to try and control all of the squares, it's still not possible. Just bishop f2 goes after this pawn, and once you prevent this with bishop to d6, now you just play bishop e3, you go after bishop h6. Like I said, impossible to control all the dark squares. So this was quite a move, bishop to g4. But Jan goes for bishop captures on c5. It's still incredibly difficult to defend. Whether it's winning by force, most likely it's just that this one was, very easy to see why it's completely winning. So here, pawn to h5 by Ding, and now bishop to d4. We have rook to b3, and now comes rook to a1. Of course, not allowing something like rook a3 to put the rook behind the passed pawn, and now you are ready to push. We have pawn to c5 by Ding, attacking the bishop, and Jan just laughs in his face and pushes pawn to a6. Of course, the bishop on d4 cannot be captured. If you capture it, pawn to a7 and pawn to a8 ends the game. So after a6, we have bishop captures on a6, and now queen to a8 with check. And that's why I said the other line was better, because it's outright just winning, and this way you allow Ding to find some defensive maneuvers. And here, if Ding finds king to g7, he will probably defend the game. For example, if king to g7, now how do you play? Bishop d5, you attack the queen and the rook. Queen to b6, now you're going to capture the rook on b3, but now c captures on d4. Let's not forget that bishop on d4 is hanging. Queen captures on a6, now queen captures on b3, and after c captures on d4, it looks like, okay, you're up the exchange, you have a d pawn, you have an e pawn. The problem is there's queen to e3 check, and after king to h1, queen captures on d4. And now white has nothing better than to play e6. This is the only attempt at winning the game. F captures, and you have this position where white is up the exchange, but black just might have enough compensation with the semi-open white king's position. You might not be able to just end the game. If you put both the queen and the rook into the attack, then you might not have sufficient resources to defend against all of the checks black can give. So something to consider. But instead of king to g7, Ding played queen to c8, offered a queen trade, and now look at this. Rook captures on a6, first Jan grabs the bishop, and now rook to b8. And now the Jan's queen on a8 is hanging, and the problem is there is only one move that wins the game for Jan, and it's a really funny one. So feel free to pause the video and win this game for Jan while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on paying attention, because yes, our bishop on d4 is still hanging, and for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it is bishop to f2, the only winning move. So congratulations to everyone who found this. It means that you can just, get out of the position, forget about the queen on a8 that's sort of hanging. It's not really hanging. But yeah, you have to find bishop to f2, so congratulations to everyone who was able to do this. And now you don't really have a move with white. If you capture the queen, then just rook recaptures and the black king falls, as well as the bishop covers the a8 square. So there's really nothing better. Captures, and you're just up a full light square bishop. So of course this is completely winning for Ding. So instead, after bishop to f2, Ding plays king to g7 now, but that's king to g7 a few moves too late. Queen to c6 now, getting the queen out of harm's way, offering a queen trade, and here rook to b1 with check, king to h2, and now queen to f5, going after that e5 pawn. But here, or instead, you could play bishop f4 check, but just g3 or bishop g3. There's nothing here. So instead, queen f5, Nepo played queen to e4, and it was in this position on move 40, probably when time control was reached, that Ding Liren resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. Now, you either trade queens, which is not really good. You're down a full piece. If you move the queen, you lose the rook here. So there is nothing. And if bishop to f4 check, again, you can grab one pawn, but it's not enough. Captures still. It's, a full bishop, completely resignable. So after this queen to e4 move, Ding resigned, and Jan Nepomniachtchi wins the game, and he wins his first ever game against Ding Liren in classical time format. Up until this point in 2016, Ding has yet to win a single game against Jan in classical time format, which is not that easy if you've seen how Jan plays chess. Even before the World Chess Championship match, he was one of the actual few people who had a positive score against Magnus Carlsen in classical. After the World Championship match, that kind of changed because there were a lot of decisive games there. But yeah, really good stuff. So it's a fun game. Pretty much all of their classical games are fun, and I think we're going to have a really, really interesting World Chess Championship match. So we'll see. We'll see when it happens. We don't know a whole lot about the World Chess Championship match 2023, but I will keep you guys informed as soon as anything goes public. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Like I said, first ever game with not a draw result between the two of them. So hope you enjoyed that. I would like to thank Nathan Halsey, Jack Obi, the More Chess 960, Goncalo Marovo, and Martin Georg Paparik for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. Thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.